Hello and welcome back everyone to the video series dedicated show on MTV that has officially wrapped up its 41st season. That's right, we're talking about The Challenge Season 41, Episode 21, aka The Reunion Part 2. Kind of like last week's video, I'm gonna go in order of the most interesting all the way up to things that didn't go anywhere. Now we are gonna start off how this episode starts off, and that is the continuation of the argument between CT and Turbo. Last episode, we were cut off in the middle, we were left on a cliffhanger of the two arguing. Turbo was calling CT names. CT said, hey, cool it with that. We do see that there are some production members that walk onto the stage, get between CT and Turbo, and then in a matter of 30 seconds, they walk off the stage and Devin is already moving on to the next topic, which is something that I kind of called at the end of last week's video, that I didn't think that there was going to be too much more between Turbo and CT. And yeah, it just didn't go much of anywhere except for CT saying that he was upset that him and Turbo will no longer be friends. That on this particular season, when they were friends, it was really nice to hang out and joke around. Devin then moves the conversation between Turbo and Theo and about their feud and rivalry over the course of the season. And this ultimately goes nowhere. Theo claims that Turbo just saw where the numbers were going and turned his back onto Theo, but Turbo denies that and says that he and Theo will not be working with each other on future seasons. There was some arguing, but it wasn't as exciting. They even showed one of Turbo's 50 AI videos that he created and posted up on Instagram while the season was playing, and it was just like, okay. What was the most exciting conversation in the reunion was the whole Aneesa versus Ashley, which then leads to Aneesa versus Nany. We first start off with Ashley versus Aneesa, where Ashley is telling her perspective of the story. She says that a lot of the vets, including herself and Aneesa, came into this season of the challenge probably being in the worst shape of their lives. So it was delusional hearing Aneesa saying that if I were to win the challenge, I will give all my money to you, Jake, if you pick me as a partner. And Ashley just can't handle that. That is just a sense of delusion that she just can't handle. Aneesa claps back saying that I'm actually in the best shape that I've been in on the show in 20 years. Aneesa talks about how she lost 40 pounds over the course of the year. She was training 4 times a week, running, and she came onto the show more prepared than she had been in years. This gets Ashley heated because she says that in 20 years, there was a point where you had to be in better shape than what you are in right now. You couldn't win then, so what makes you think that you're magically gonna come onto this season and win? I'm not gonna lie, when Ashley went there, I thought there was gonna be a lot more pushback from other challenge cast members. I thought Aneesa was gonna get heated, maybe walk off the stage. That was not the case. Everybody just let Ashley and Aneesa just go after each other. Now, this is where the whole Aneesa versus Nany situation comes in. Aneesa apologizes to Nany, saying that in that moment and coming onto the season, she had expectations for Nany and their friendship coming into the game. Aneesa put that on Nany unrealistically, so Aneesa was taking her frustrations out on Nany for something that Aneesa put on Nany instead of it being Nany's fault in any way, if that makes any sense. This is where Nany claims that Ashley had been a better friend to Nany over the course of the challenge season, and that Aneesa did nothing to help Nany or to benefit her in the game whatsoever. So in that moment, she was always going to stick close to Ashley more so than her sticking close to Aneesa, even if she helped comfort Aneesa. Tensions rise to where then Nany asks Aneesa, who did you call after you were eliminated from the game? Come to find out, Aneesa called Kaycee, Nany's ex, after she was eliminated, and Aneesa claims that she called Kaycee out of concern for Nany, which is the absolute wrong thing to do. If Nany and Kaycee are split, they're no longer engaged, why are you calling Kaycee about Nany? Now, maybe, just maybe, Kaycee and Nany were still talking with each other, trying to forge a friendship after their broken engagement or something or other. But still, at the same time, why are you calling Kaycee about Nany when they're no longer together? If you truly are worried about Nany, why aren't you calling Nany? Or I'm sure you have other friends in common that you can call that were not previously engaged to Nany. Now, even if Aneesa had the purest intentions for calling Kaycee about Nany, which I do not believe for a second, but even if she did call her out of the purest intentions of, I just truly worry about Nany, and Kaycee, you're the only person that can talk to Nany and get through to her, that is clear crossing a boundary. I'm sure Aneesa could have reached out to anybody else, say a Jenna, say a Kayla, say Cora, anybody. She could have reached out to anybody. You calling Kaycee about Nany and telling Kaycee about stuff that Nany did over the course of this season is such a bad look. To finish off this segment, Nany and Aneesa agreed to be cordial with one another if they're going to be on future seasons with each other. They're not going to really go after each other or put a target on each other's backs, but they're not going to have a friendship and they're not going to work together. We can turn our attention over to the mini-final where, of course, the topic of who cheated comes into play. But upon the talk about the mini-final and who cheated, Bananas brought out an onion hat and placed it on D, really the only person they had definitive proof, which D said that she only threw some of her onion in the bushes because when she looked over, there was already an onion in the bush next to her. So she's like, if somebody else cheated, I'm just gonna cheat. In a roundabout way, Theo does confess to cheating. It just wasn't that he threw it and chucked it off the cliffside. He put peppers and everything in his pocket and ran off with them. This leads to Devin asking for a show of hands of who cheated. Nobody raised their hands except for Leroy. Leroy confesses that there was no way he was going to be able to eat all that stuff, and so he admits to cheating. This is where TJ zoomed into the reunion, first gives props to CT for not cheating. This stems back to a live stream TJ did in the middle of the season when the episode aired, where he claimed that 100% CT cheated, that he is a savvy vet, and that he would find a way that if he didn't have to eat, he wouldn't eat. CT heard those comments, was greatly offended by what TJ said about him, and started attacking TJ on social media. That led to them doing a live stream together where TJ apologized to CT and said that he shouldn't have said that stuff. So at the reunion, he wanted to back it up again in front of everybody, saying that CT, you did great. I'm glad that you were one of at least a few people that actually did eat. He was disappointed in everybody who cheated because you made it that far in the game. Why are you gonna cheat? He was asked who would he give his MVP award to, and he said Sydney. And because he wasn't at the top of the mountains to congratulate Olivia and Jeremy for winning the Challenge 41, he did it at the reunion, which I thought was really, really nice. Now, I did mention CT in the previous section. We do get a Justice for Leka segment at the reunion where CT clears the air saying that I did not throw the challenge to get rid of Leka or anything like that. He does say he understands why Michaela threw the challenge to send him in against Derek C. He thinks it was a great strategy. Michaela does say that she was trying to gain favor with the rookies by throwing it, but also, what if CT were to get eliminated? Michaela can't be partnered up with CT, so why not just throw him into elimination and hope he goes home? And at the end, CT turns to Leka, says that he hopes that she gets another chance on the show, that she is a very strong competitor, and that he feels responsible for her going into elimination and getting eliminated so early on in the game, so he just really hopes that she gets another chance to show everything that she's got on the show. The last real exciting segment of this reunion part is talking about the couples that were on this season. You had Rogan and Izzy early on, where Izzy says that her and Rogan are not together, but he did send her flowers. So maybe there's a future conversation that might happen between her and Rogan, and maybe they'll blossom into something later on. Devin then turns the attention over to D and Bananas, asking if they are still a couple. Bananas and D talk about how they met prior to the season, but there wasn't anything romantic between them until they got onto the show together. They have been seeing each other outside the challenge, but they travel so much independently that they don't feel comfortable being in an exclusive relationship at the moment. But when they do get together, they do act like a couple. There are feelings there. So maybe if they're willing to settle down and not travel as much separately, maybe there could be something in the future for both of them. And what was very interesting is hearing that Nany was actually 50-50 between Will and Cedric. That Cedric was originally her cuddle buddy, and at a certain point in the game, she was like, who should I go for? Should I try to make the move on Cedric or Will? It just so happened that she went with Will, which I didn't hear anything about that. I was actually very surprised about hearing the whole thing with like cuddling with Cedric, and maybe there could have been something more with Cedric, but she went with Will. So that was really the only surprising thing that I heard during this reunion part 2. Now, the final section that I want to talk about, and I kind of grouped them together because they are very similar, are the Hangnail questions, and towards the end of Reunion Part 2, there were some fan questions. The Hangnail questions in Part 2, you had Ashley M saying that Derek C is tougher on social media than in person. She initially said Sydney, but then she changed it to Derek C, which he didn't take it very seriously. He kind of shrugged it off and was like, who cares? I do go on Instagram live a lot. And then he doesn't have a lot to say at the reunion because there weren't a lot of questions tailor-made to talk to him about. Justin was tasked to point out a vet who should retire, and he said Aneesa, which Aneesa did have some pushback on that one, but I think everybody was just like, yeah, he's kind of not wrong. And then Gabe said that Theo was the most overrated challenger at the reunion, which Theo said fair since he kind of pushed Gabe under the bus to stake a claim, and Gabe got eliminated for that. So Theo just took it like, okay, who cares, whatever, you know? Now, speaking of Theo, there were 2 fan questions mentioned by Devin at the end of this reunion. One of which was talking about how Derek C had tummy troubles on the initial mountain climb, which I didn't need to hear this. Who thought that this would be a good question to talk about? I don't care. And I don't want to hear about people's tummy troubles, whether they're on the side of the mountain or in the challenge house or at the reunion. I don't want to hear anything about that. But then there was another fan question about the interaction between Michaela and Olivia at the Running Man challenge, which then tried to reignite the whole Michaela and Olivia argument and rivalry, which was talked extensively about in part 1. So them trying to bring it back for part 2 was kind of like out of nowhere, out of left field. It's like, if this was a question, you should have grouped it in part 1. When you guys were talking about the Michaela and Olivia rivalry, it just felt repetitive to bring it up again this late in the reunion, and the whole argument led to, we agreed to disagree, and even Devin said, we're not getting anywhere with this, so let's just move on. Why even show it in the reunion if it didn't go anywhere or nothing of substance was said? It just baffled me why we had those 2 fan questions. Why out of all the fan questions, I'm sure there was multiple fan questions, why those 2 in particular, something we already talked about, and others was bathroom troubles that I didn't want to hear anything about, and then most of the hangnail questions were just like, fell flat, and nobody really cared about whatever was being said or being answered. So realistically, Reunion Part 2 was fine. Part 1 was way better and had a lot more moving parts and a lot better conversation pieces. I still think that they could have grouped up these 2 parts and we could have had 2 hours of a really solid reunion. Overall, I thought that Part 2 was lacking. I still think that there were some good portions, like the Aneesa versus everybody arguments and some of those reveals. But in saying that, we end off on a high note of everybody putting in their hands and going season 41 and walking off the stage with giant smiles on their faces. This was a really good season in my opinion all the way around. I really appreciated this season. I thought it was a breath of fresh air with the rookies, and I hope to see a lot of them coming back on future seasons. More specifically, I hope to see them back as soon as season 42. I think there are a lot of great players on this cast, a lot of great building blocks that if we have time to learn about them, grow with them, get used to seeing them on a regular basis and how they play the game over and over and over again like we have with the vets, I feel like there are good pieces here for the future of the show. It's just that MTV and the Challenge production team need to invest in these players and have us, the audience, get to know more about them. And I'm even talking about players that weren't even at the reunion, that I would love to see back. Blue, Ben, I know that the holidays are coming up and that the rumored departure date / filming start date is in February, late February. So we're going to be seeing a lot of names being posted up on social media and the Reddit and everything. So it'll be very, very soon that we're going to be hearing more and more news about who's going to be featured or possibly featured on season 482. So I'm hoping to see a lot of people from this season on next season, building up their reputation and impact on the show in general, and playing alongside some great veterans as well. But overall, I really enjoyed this season. I enjoyed making videos throughout this season and covering this season of the show, and I just want to say thank you for watching the videos throughout this season. Now, I know that this is the end of season 41, but this isn't the end of content. I'll be making weekly videos over here on the YouTube main channel, as well as over on my Patreon at patreon.com/angelcakevids. A lot of content that I'm very excited to make. I'll be making some interviews, live streams, long form videos, short form videos. So keep your eyes peeled for future content coming from this channel. And speaking of the Patreon, I want to give a special shout out thank you to everyone who supports me over at patreon.com/angelcakevids. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I want to thank you for not just watching this video, but for watching my videos covering this season. I'll be back really, really soon with more challenge content, more content in general. But until then, peace.